lovelies, and welcome to this week's video. This week we will be talking about Persephone. There's various stories and takes on what actually happened. Was she kidnapped? Did she ever actually fall in love with Hades? What's the story? And then I'm also going to talk about various books that have to do with the story of Persephone. They are fiction, but there is one that is so close to the actual mythology, just with a couple little changes that make it fiction, that I really feel like says a lot. And we're going to go through all the various stories, and this is kind of going to leave you with a thinking of, well, did she actually love Hades? Did she choose to eat the pomegranates? Was she actually abducted, or is that just what we've been told through thousands of years of trying to make women not independent, since this is part of the goddess, or the Embracing Your Inner Goddess series. If you want to watch my Mabon videos that are just on Mabon, I will have all the Mabon videos that I've made within the past year below, including just Mabon, and that will be first, and then I have my Mabon Feast, as well as the Mabon for Kids that I made last week. So, going forth. Okay, so the main story of Persephone is that she was a young, beautiful woman named Kore. She's the daughter of Demeter and Zeus. She was out picking flowers, narcissus, specifically in some stories, and all of a sudden the earth opened up, and out came Hades, the god of the underworld, and he abducted her. Now, immediately, Demeter began her search for her daughter. Now, there's a couple different takes. One is that Demeter heard Persephone's screams and began searching and became so angry that she withheld her blessings to the people of the earth, and the land grew dark and cold, and crops withered and died, and hence this is what caused autumn, etc. But it really actually at that point plunged into a deep winter and drought. There's also this story that she didn't hear screams, she just knew, and she went on to have a search, in which in some stories she had Hecate help her, which is what I discussed in my Mabon video from last year, and some stories she had Helios and others go and help her try and find her daughter. In all stories, it's said that Persephone, or at the time Kore, refused to eat while being in the underworld, and then Hades offered her pomegranate seeds. Now, this is again where stories have differed. In some stories, she knew that if she were to eat these seeds, that she would have to stay in the underworld. In some stories, she didn't know and ended up being trapped. And in some stories, she knew and already had fallen in love with him. And in some stories, she was never actually abducted. She chose to do this. Either way, in all stories, she did miss her mother. She missed the light and the warmth of the upper world and of Olympus and of the earth. She missed her family. In some stories, her now husband, who has called her Persephone, was loving and attentive, and she enjoyed her role as queen of the underworld, and she didn't want to leave Hades forever, and that's why she took the seeds from him and finally ate. In some stories, she didn't want to be with him at all, and it was a full abduction, and she just wanted to be back with her mother. Either way, Zeus eventually gives in. In many stories, by the way, Zeus already had made agreements prior to Persephone being born that she would marry Hades and become the queen of the underworld. Some stories he didn't. Some stories actually align with one of the books I'm going to talk about, which is that when they all became gods and goddesses of the certain areas after the war with the Titans, etc., that it was destined that Demeter's daughter would marry Hades. So there's so many versions of what actually happened. Now, the main one is that she was abducted. Some say even raped. I didn't really ever hear the raped one until recently when one of my witch friends brought it up. And I've been studying Persephone for years. I just always heard the abduction, never the rape. And I still haven't really been able to find much on the rape. I only saw one article that said she was raped and abducted, and that was it. Only one. But anyways, I'm sure you guys might have seen other. Anyways, so Zeus sends Hermes, the messenger, to the underworld to bring back Persephone. However, the pomegranate seeds do not allow her to return completely to her mother. So then they started bargaining, and the deal became that half the year Persephone would spend with Hades, and half the year she would spend with her mother. And that's where we get the seasons. So during spring and summer, she's with Demeter, and autumn and winter, she's with Hades, and that's what caused the season change. As being a goddess, Persephone was very gracious as queen of the underworld. There's various stories of people that she helps, such as Psyche and Hercules. So, it's really up to you what you think the story is. Many people in recent times believe that Persephone decided to do this, that it wasn't an abduction, that she had fallen for Hades when the earth opened up, and she was becoming an independent woman and wanted to make her own decision and her own choice to go to the underworld. I've also read articles and stories that can be traced back to, back in the Greek days when these stories were first written, in which that was also the case. But, just like with Christianity and other religions, stories change due to the cultural changes, such as the fact that Christians are in denial of Jesus and Mary Magdalene's relationship. In Maiden Mother Crone, it's stated that Persephone made the terrifying journey downward by herself. Demeter could not accompany her daughter. Each of us must make the journey through the labyrinth of our minds alone. So they're basically saying that she decided to go and take that. Her mother couldn't do it. She was independent and went through a dark journey. And we can kind of compare that to the shadow work that I talk about in my Mabon video from last year that is kind of important for us to do during the Mabon season of self-reflection, etc., and taking that personal solitary journey to get our independence away from what we've been taught and told to do throughout our lives. So that is kind of a more empowering version of the story. Again, I'd recommend by DJ Conway, Maiden, Mother, and Crone for that. Now I'm going to talk about the books that I have on handy. I'll get to my favorite one at the end that I just really, really love and I highly, highly recommend, and I kind of discussed it a little bit before because this video isn't outlined, I'm just kind of going with it. First, I will just quickly show this one again. I showed this one in the pagan parenting video for Mabon when I discussed teaching Persephone. It's about the Greek goddess of harvest. Demeter loves her daughter Persephone more than life itself. So after she is kidnapped by Hades, ruler of the underworld, Demeter's sorrows cover the earth in winter snow. And it goes on and talks about how seasons became. It's called Time for Flowers, Time for Snow. And it has amazing artwork and little poems, short stories going through the whole adventure, you could say, of the story of Demeter, Persephone, and Hades. It also comes with a CD of songs to go along with the book. That's just quick. I'm not really going to review that. Then there is an actual comic book, graphic novel series. This is, I believe this is the first one, but Demeter and Persephone, Spring Held Hostage, a Greek myth. This one I do actually really enjoy the story. In this one, it also says that she herself, though she was kidnapped, she did fall in love with him. And she goes and when she meets back up with her mother, she tells her, I'm in love with him. And yeah, so it's what it says on the back is, the goddess Demeter is loved by all for her warmth and bounty, but no one is closer to Demeter's own heart than her beautiful daughter Persephone. When Persephone disappears one day, Demeter searches everywhere. She discovers that Persephone was kidnapped by Hades, the god of the underworld. Demeter is filled with sorrow, and a permanent winter falls on the land. Can Demeter rescue her daughter from the underworld? Can the gods and goddesses of Mount Olympus convince Demeter to bring back spring and summer? So that brings in the element of how Demeter was being stubborn herself and just would not give up, and people kind of had to like force her to go back, and she didn't want to make that agreement, but she couldn't just let the crops die and then allowing the others to die. Right here, where is it? It's towards the end here, in which she says, right here, this is when they meet back up, and she says, oh, okay, so Demeter says, you didn't eat anything, did you? You know the rules. I hope. And then Persephone, right here, the one with color here similar to mine currently, says, I hope she'll understand. Or she thinks that, and then she says, I ate a few pomegranate seeds. And her mom said, you what? You know better than that. And she said, I know, but I love him. So it's a different take, and it has an adventure with it. I recommend it for other nerds like myself who want to read it. There's also other graphic myths and legends on Greek, on Nordic, and Celtic, and a whole bunch of others. So I recommend it. Then I have one that I just could not finish. Okay, So it's called the goddesses Persephone's Tale, Love Underground. I may eventually finish it, but this is so off course of the whole idea. Now, like, when we're talking about fiction books, this is complete fiction. Even where Persephone, or Cora, grew up, how she was raised. In this, she didn't know that Zeus was her father growing up. She always had a thing for the bad boys. She does at first reject Hades, but eventually falls for him. Like, he more of tries to court her in this. Yeah, so it's kind of like a romantic novel slash teen, young adult type book. I mean, if you're into just a full-on pure fiction book, it's a good read. But if you kind of want to have that element of the actual Greek stories while also having it changed a little bit to try and get you to think, like, this is a different point of view. Maybe this is how it could have really happened, or, you know, maybe not fully because it's a fiction book, but get you thinking a different perspective on the whole story. Which leads me to Persephone, Queen of the Dead by Isadora Marie. I highly, highly recommend this book. I showed this book in my Pagan Pride Fest video, which is where I got it. Now this book, it's long, but it's a larger text, and it talks about her life living on Olympus, talks about her, what happened with all the generations prior to Zeus becoming the god, and all the various stories of the Greeks that led them to where they are. It talks about the whole agreement of destiny, and that they had to drink from the river Styx, and if they were to go against it, they'd, you know, basically die, which is the only way a god or goddess can die. And it was agreed at the time when Zeus was put into the heavens and Hades was given to the underworld, and Poseidon the waters, that Demeter and Zeus's daughter would be married to Hades and become the queen of the underworld. So it has that aspect. I couldn't put the book down. I love it. I love the perspective. The story in this goes that one year she was out picking flowers and the earth opened up. She saw Hades. I guess he was going to go talk to Zeus about something, which happened to be the arrangement of their marriage. So she only had a glance of him, and for the whole next year, all she did was think about Hades. She fell in love with him instantly. And she would make excuses to go on Earth to go and pick flowers in that same spot. I think it said daily or almost daily, something. Yeah, it was daily for the whole next year, waiting for this man to come from the earth. And then he comes out, and then they eventually meet up. They decide that they're going to be together. It also has, it says it from the point of view of Persephone, so it's written as Persephone. There are also chapters that are written from Demeter's point of view, which is the main story we're constantly told and heard. Demeter sees it as she was abducted, and she's against this, and etc. There's also Zeus's, a couple chapters of Zeus. I think there was one or two of Hades, can't recall, but it's mainly all Persephone and then a few of Demeter. And then it goes on to where one of Zeus's sons, who had to that he tried to protect by making king of the main area in which on Earth in which they would visit, would take Persephone in for a year. I think it was a year and a day. And she could only visit with Hades once in a while, and then they were to get married in secret. Zeus had it all set up. They got married behind Demeter's back, and then Demeter did the whole destruction of everything. And then an agreement was made, and in this story, Persephone did not want to go back with her mother. Though she loved her mother deeply, she wanted to stay with her husband on her decision. But it was the only way to make the crops grow again. I really enjoyed it. It made me really think and reevaluate the whole story surrounding Persephone, and how, for lack of better language and words, the patriarchal culture and society that we have lived in for the past couple centuries has perhaps maybe changed the story, or even at the time that these were the main gods and goddesses of Greece, that they made it written as such to try and keep a lesson for girls to kind of stick with their mother and whatever. But this really gives a different point of view and is a very empowering version of Persephone. I personally, my view is that of kind of taking what I've learned from this book, as well as what I stated from the Maiden, Mother, and Crone book, in which it was more of a journey of her independence and becoming her own woman. I do believe that she did actually love Hades. I don't think that she was held captive. What else? Oh, one other thing I like about this book as well is that after we kind of complete the story that is related to Mabon, you know, the season change, we get to see some of the various stories of Persephone as a goddess of the underworld and the dead, and all the great things that she's done. Various stories, like I mentioned before, Hercules and a bunch of other stories. And then they actually go into what happens when Christianity comes in, and when they are no longer the gods that are matter to people anymore. And it has, from Demeter's view and Persephone's view, it's a very interesting book all around, so I highly recommend it. I know this was another long video, but I really wanted to get across the points of all the different takes of the story of Persephone, which is obviously directly tied to Mabon for many folks. And I want y'all to kind of think about, okay, what was the real story? You know, we've talked about Lilith, we've talked about Hecate, we talked about Rhiannon and other goddesses, but with Lilith and Hecate, for example, there has been so much change in their stories since the dawn of their creation, that it was very obvious and straightforward about how the patriarchal, or rather, I don't know, and Christian culture and just the society we're currently in changed their stories over time. I feel the same happened with Persephone. So I would encourage everyone to do some reading on their own, really pick up this book, also look at the Maiden, Mother, and Crone. I feel like that's another really good book just all around, and do some research and reflect on, was this girl actually abducted and whatnot, or did she really want to be with Hades? So that is all I have on this story. I hope y'all have a great Mabon. As I said, I will have all of the links to past Mabon videos below, as well as my shop as normal, since that is my business and my source of income. I now have my smudge sticks out, and I'm going to be putting out more Hecate products soon, like a Hecate incense as well. So check that out. I'll see y'all next time. Have a lovely Mabon. I love you all. Please like, share, press the subscribe button and the bell button, and see you next time. Love you. Bye.